Hello guys, welcome to United's Glory, a Manchester United Football Club fan channel. If you love talking about Manchester United, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit all notifications on, and make sure you smash a like on the video, because if you love talking about Manchester United, I can assure you, you will enjoy this channel. After 3 months of no football, the Premier League returned due to the ongoing COVID-19 problems, and finally we got to see Tottenham Hotspur versus Manchester United in a somewhat apathetic game that ended in one apiece, 1-1. Both teams have taken home half of the spoils. Not a bad result for either team particularly. Tottenham in particular probably needed the 3 points more. Now, I'm not saying Manchester United didn't need the 3 points, but ultimately it keeps Tottenham at bay, and 1 point away to Tottenham isn't the worst result. It could have been worse. Obviously, this marked the start of a huge battle for the top four. Whilst Chelsea are in the driving seat, Tottenham was one of the harder games for Manchester United, and this is now out the way. So I'll give my thoughts on the game and what I thought of the game. Make sure you let me know your opinions down in the comments section. Make your voices heard. There was a lot of talk surrounding Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's starting 11 for today's game, obviously with the return of Rashford and Paul Pogba. Rashford did start. Pogba sat on the bench, but did come on in the second half and made a huge impact. In hindsight, I would have to say that it was probably a mistake not to start Pogba, but ultimately you can understand why Pogba didn't start. Harsh on Matic, but ultimately begrudge Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for sticking to his guns and the team that was doing well for him before the COVID-19 break. It was a tepid, apathetic game with intervals of competitiveness. Tottenham definitely seemed more competitive until the second half when Pogba and Greenwood came on. But the first half was particularly cagey, a lot of sideways passing, especially in the first 15 minutes. Manchester United definitely had the better of the middle parts of the first half, but unfortunately that's when Tottenham caught Manchester United on the break and scored. Steven Bergwijn netted for Tottenham, a good dribble, but ultimately you had to put it down to bad defending on the part of Luke Shaw and Harry Maguire, and atrocious goalkeeping by David De Gea. But it does have to be said, whilst Manchester United weren't particularly brilliant, the goal did come against the run of play. Anyway, the heads dropped after that, and we struggled to break down Tottenham's low block. Tottenham, obviously a Mourinho team, became very compact, and with just one creative player on the pitch in Bruno Fernandes, we really struggled to find a way through. In the second half, we started the second half trying, but ultimately still lacking cutting edge. With the introduction of Pogba and Mason Greenwood, we did see a significant injection in the pace and cutting edge to Manchester United's play, starting to create clearer cut chances, one which Martial should have done better with, and the second one he was unlucky not to score. Tottenham changed for Manchester United in this particular occasion, crowding the midfield, trying to crowd out Pogba and Bruno Fernandes because they were cutting Tottenham apart. However, we still persisted in a bit of individual brilliance from that man Paul Pogba, who got us the penalty which Bruno Fernandes finished off. After that we continued persisting, but ultimately we couldn't find a way to get the winner, and Mason Greenwood in particular came extremely close late on. In conclusion, you have to say it was a fair result. If we had nicked it, you can't say Tottenham could have complained, because I felt like most of the initiative was taken by Manchester United. But you have to concede that Tottenham were largely in control of the game in that typical Mourinho fashion, where they just want to control the game by being behind the ball, which they did in abundance. Of course, the idea is always to be looking for that W, that win, them 3 points. But ultimately, under the certain circumstances and the scenario, a point will do for now. But I think in relation to the top four race, we must get 3 points against Sheffield United. So on to the player ratings, starting with the goalkeeper David De Gea. Another howler from David De Gea. If he doesn't concede that goal, Manchester United win this game. Simple as. He is starting to become a consistent error maker, and I'm not sure how much longer we can keep putting up with this with Henderson waiting in the wings. Roy Keane said at half-time that he's sick to death of this goalkeeper, and I'm starting to get extremely frustrated with David De Gea. World-class shot stopper, but severely lacking in other departments, and when it doesn't go for him, it really doesn't go for him. A good save shortly after that from Son's header, but for me, he's at fault for that goal. 3 out of 10. Onto the right back, Aaron Wan-Bissaka didn't do anything particularly wrong, but didn't do anything particularly good either. An average game for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, very sound defensively of course, but not offering too much going forward. He did get a lot further forward in the second half, but James's movement ahead of him leaves a lot to be desired, so you have to be empathetic in that regard. I'd give a 6 out of 10 for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. For Victor Lindelof at the centre of defence, caught out of position a few times in the first half, but ultimately he was solid. Otherwise, I'll give Lindelof a 6 out of 10 as well. He kept Harry Kane particularly quiet when Harry Kane roamed over to his side. 6 out of 10 for Victor Lindelof. Harry Maguire, his central defensive partner, got absolutely skinned for the goal. He was caught flat-footed and Bergwijn just breezed past him. Now, I'm a big fan of Harry Maguire. I do think he gets too many critics concerning his price tag, but ultimately, as an international defender, you cannot get caught flat-footed as he did for that particular goal. Sure, the goalkeeper needs to do better, but if he'd have done better, it would never have put David De Gea in that position in the first place. Other than that, he was pretty solid and kept Harry Kane quiet when Harry Kane roamed over to his side, won all his aerial duels. For me, Harry Maguire gets a 5 out of 10. I feel I'm being a little bit generous, but I feel he redeemed himself throughout the rest of the game. On to the left back, Luke Shaw. Where do I begin? A bang average performance, as per usual. His header that led to Tottenham's goal was lackadaisical. Now, 9 times out of 10, that wouldn't lead to a goal, but what was it? For a left-footed left back, he offers as little to no width. He never goes on the outside. He never takes a chance. Luke Shaw's fortunate that left back isn't the problem position for us this summer, because I feel in a future transfer window, his position is going to be cast in doubt. Brandon Williams can definitely force that issue, but Luke Shaw needs to be doing far better than he did tonight. He improved in the second half, got a bit more forward, but ultimately was very sloppy with his passing. For me, 3 out of 10 for Luke Shaw. Onto the defensive midfield. Fred, tidy and urgent in the first half, but started to get a little sloppy in the second half. Not his greatest performance. He's been one of our best players this season. I give him a 5 out of 10. Onto Scott McTominay, tenacious and aggressive. Won a lot of balls and a lot of his duels, but ultimately his lack of creativity really shows. He's got a lot of drive, but he doesn't split defences open and often passes sideways. But otherwise, a relatively solid performance. I'll give McTominay a 6 out of 10. Onto Bruno Fernandes. Very incisive passing. The only player that really looked like he could actually do something for us, especially in the first half, in the early parts of the second half, until Pogba came on the pitch. His line-splitting passes are incredibly impressive. He is probably our best player overall over the whole period of the match. He did have 3 poor corners in the first half, but obviously his penalty was the match winner. He kept his composure, he kept his cool and buried it. 8 out of 10 for Bruno for me, and I'd say he was the man of the match. On to Daniel James, lacked composure. Quite frankly, based on this performance, he is not good enough to be starting for Manchester United. He has pace, he's good at breaking down the line, but at the moment, for me, he's just a 20-minute player. Hard-working, but lacking any real spark. Poor performance, deserved to be hauled off. James, 3 out of 10 for me. On to Anthony Martial. Absolutely horrendous in the first half. We might as well have been playing a ghost up front. In the second half, when the Pogba came on and we had Bruno Fernandes and Pogba feeding him, he started to come alive. Probably should have scored the first chance he was gifted with by Bruno Fernandes. He was unlucky not to score on the second. Great save by Hugo Lloris. But my problem is he shouldn't need both of these players on the pitch to start doing something. He needs to add a new dimension to his game. His A game's great, especially when it's coming off. But when the game isn't going his way, he needs to find a way to be difficult, even if it's not part of his natural game. He was heading for a free in the first half, but his second half was vastly improved. A bit unlucky to come off, considering the previous 15 minutes. 5 out of 10 for me. On to Marcus Rashford. Had a few chances, got on the end of a few things, but generally snatched at his chances. I think that's the paradox with Rashford and Martial. When both their A games are going great, they're great players. I'd even say Martial has the edge in terms of technical ability over Rashford, but Rashford tends to make things happen even when the game's not going well for him. Tonight it wasn't his A game, but he still made a few things happen. So for that, I'd give him a 6 out of 10. Onto the substitutes, Pogba came on, basically changed the game. People saying he has to earn his way back in. I don't think it's going to be long before he earns his way back in. In hindsight, he should have started tonight, considering Tottenham's extreme compact low block. But ultimately, he's too good to be on the bench, and he's better and more creative than Scott McTominay. We got to see sparks of the Bruno Fernandes-Pogba partnership. 7 out of 10 for Pogba for me. On to Mason Greenwood. Very unfortunate not to score at the end. Where Dan James was completely ineffective down that right-hand side, Mason Greenwood came on and started causing problems and gave Tottenham something to deal with. As far as I'm concerned, if Dan James is good enough to be starting matches, Mason Greenwood certainly is. Matic came on, looked composed, had a bit of drive, was good on the ball, but didn't have long enough to really impose himself. Ighalo, the same thing. So I'd give both Matic and Ighalo 6 out of 10. Bailly only came on for 3 minutes and couldn't really impose himself on the game either, with even less time. So just not applicable for Bailly. So that's all for this match review. On to Sheffield United next. Hopefully we can get the 3 points and go from there and keep the train moving to the top 4. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Do you agree with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's tactics? Do you think we should have done better in this match or done anything different? Looking forward to reading your opinions. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop a like on the video if you enjoyed discussing Manchester United.